Welcome everyone to Scam Chat Wednesday in August. I'm Sarita Cardozo and I'll be your host today. I'm a volunteer with AARP California. I also serve as a fraud fighter with the AARP California Fraud Watch Network. So glad you could join us today. Before we jump in, we ask everyone to observe the following meeting agreements so everyone can have a good experience. Please keep yourself on mute. Let's not have distracting background noises. Use the chat to raise questions and add comments. And assume everyone's good intentions using respectful language and tone. Please note that if your camera is on, we can see what's happening in your background. Also, this meeting is being recorded, so those who can't be with us today can still view the program at a later time on our AARP YouTube channel. Please click OK when it appears on your screen. Now, if you're not familiar, the AARP Fraud Watch Network is a free fraud prevention and education resource available to anyone. Our network is all about helping communities avoid fraud and scams through information, education, resources, and events. So thank you for joining us for our third conversation in a series of weekly interactive fraud prevention and education conversations that we are co-hosting throughout August with our friends at the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. I hope that you will help us to make this an interactive conversation by sharing your comments, your experiences, your thoughts, and by asking your questions. As always, we have set aside time at the end of today's presentations to answer your questions. So today, we're going to be talking about investment and payment method scams and how to stay protected from them. Before I introduce our guests for today's conversation from the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, let me first share a few housekeeping items. Now, for audio purposes, please keep yourself on mute until you're invited to unmute yourself. To ask a question, please write your question in our chat. And during our Q&A session, I will invite you to unmute yourself and come on live to ask your question. If you're not comfortable coming on camera or asking a question, I will do it for you. And lastly, today you will hear from speakers from the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. However, please note that the opinions expressed in the presentations by our speakers and on their slides are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent the views of your agencies. The information is solely for educational purposes only. Now, before I turn to our guests, let me share this with you. Peer-to-peer or P2P payment applications have become so popular, they've become common verbs in our society when we refer to payment. Having P2P has made it so easy to send money to other people just by searching for their phone number, email address, or the username. And although P2P payment services can be easy to set up and simple to use and are generally secure, it's important to be aware that criminals may try to scam you into sending money. And I also want you to picture this. The phone rings and a friendly, energetic-sounding stranger is on the line asking if you have a minute to learn how to triple your money in just 6 months by investing in gold or silver mines. Or maybe you get an email urging you to buy shares of a company whose stock price is sure to go through the roof. It sounds too good to be true because it is too good to be true. And in 2023, investment fraud was the costliest type of crime tracked by the FBI, with nearly $4.6 billion of losses reported. And that's a 38% increase from $3.3 billion in 2022. And according to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, Older adults are among the most alluring targets because they've spent years amassing the savings that scammers covet. So let's meet our first guest to help us understand more about this issue. Now, I'd love to welcome Sally Westlake with the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. Hello and welcome, Sally. A little bit about Sally. She's an outreach specialist for the DFPI. She provides presentations throughout the state on recognizing the warning signs of financial frauds and scams. She also provides tools to help prevent people falling victim to fraud. She's responsible for coordinating outreach programs, developing partnerships with community-based organizations, and educating the most vulnerable in our communities. Her focus is on promoting financial literacy and awareness of financial risks in the marketplace. Welcome and great to have you back, Sally. So Sally, let's get into some questions to help us understand payment method scams, how your agency can help keep us protected. Tell us a little bit about the DFPI and who are some of the licenses you regulate and oversee.
Well, thank you, Sarita, for the introduction. So glad to be here and be able to partner with AARP California for another year of Scam Chat Wednesdays. And thank you to the audience for joining us. So the DFPI, we protect consumers and businesses by overseeing a variety of financial services, products, and professionals. And we serve the state by enforcing the state's financial service laws and providing resources to Californians to help them make informed financial decisions and help consumers protect their finances from fraud.
So the DFPI licenses investment advisors as well as broker-dealers?
Well, yes. So we are committed to maintaining a fair, healthy, and trusted financial services marketplace for all Californians. So some of our licensees include state-chartered banks and credit unions, residential mortgage loan originators, California finance lenders, the PACE administrators, your escrow agents, payday loans, money transmitters, and investment advisors, broker-dealers, franchises, debt collectors, credit repair agencies, and many more. So you can visit our website at dfpi.ca.gov for a full list and to check their license status or to file a complaint. You can also call us at 866-275-2677 with any questions. So you asked, does the DFPI license investment advisors and broker-dealers too? Well, so yes. So we recommend before you move forward with any investment, check if an investment product, broker, salesperson, or advisor is licensed or registered with the DFPI. Again, you can do this by visiting our website.
Thank you, Sally. So what are some of the payment methods the scammers prefer?
So understanding the scammer's preferred payment method may help you spot a scam before it starts. So scammers prefer to get money in forms that are not traceable, and that includes your retail gift cards. So these are among the scammers' most preferred payment forms, as a gift card can be quickly redeemed to buy other gift cards. And once that's done, the money becomes untraceable. Scammers often sell these gift cards online at a discount to convert it into cash. Then there's Bitcoin. As cryptocurrencies become more accessible, because Bitcoin ATMs are now widespread and buying small increments online has become so much easier, crooks have grown more interested. Now, victims are directed to a Bitcoin ATM and told to buy with cash. Once the Bitcoin payment is transferred to the crook, it cannot be traced. And then there's, of course, cash. It's still king with all the scammers, as it's totally untraceable. Scammers tell targets to send hard currency wrapped in newspaper or even tinfoil to make it harder to spot when you send it in an overnight shipment. And now scammers sometimes will even send a courier to your house to pick up the cash at your door. And then there's wire transfers. So these services remain useful for sending funds to loved ones, but criminals Love them too, like MoneyGram or Western Union transfers, are mostly untraceable and have limited protections. So never use these to pay a stranger. And then, of course, there is P2P payments.
Sally, can you describe what is a P2P payment?
Sure. So a P2P or peer-to-peer payment systems has revolutionized the way we pay. So long gone are the days of writing checks or visiting a bank to wire money to friends and family. Now you can send money directly to loved ones in just a few clicks. Whether you're splitting a dinner bill or helping out with regular household payments, P2P has changed the game when it comes to paying friends and family. Now, that's the key word, paying friends and family. P2P payments typically use a digital platform to transfer money directly from one account to another. So P2P systems are often online portals or mobile apps to make it easy to transfer money wherever you are. The P2P service, the service facilitates the transaction between the two parties. So when you register with the P2P payment service, like Venmo or Zelle, you'll need to connect it to a bank account. This might be a traditional bank account. It can be a credit card or even a mobile wallet, for example. Different services allow different kinds of accounts. You'll then be able to send money to a loved one registered with the same service. Now, common P2P service providers include PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, and Cash App. But these apps are meant for people who know and trust each other, and they don't offer the same consumer protections as your bank. Always decline transfer requests from strangers. Unfortunately, scammers are always lurking out there, and users should always be on the lookout. If you've been a victim of a scam involving a P2P company or payment scam, please submit a complaint with us or call us for assistance.
Thank you, Sally. What are some common P2P payment red flags that we should look out for?
That's a great question. So some common payment scams involve overpayment scams and imposter scams. So we should be careful when using P2P to send money. Can we get the next slide up? So you got to remember, never send money back to anyone that has paid you in error. That's a scam. Always contact a P2P service provider directly about any suspicious account activity or transaction errors. Next slide. Next slide. There you go. So never share any personal information or passcodes with anyone that contacts you to inquire about your accounts. Do not click any links or call any phone numbers provided by potential scammers. Treat P2P payments like cash transactions. Never pay for products until you receive them. And do your research because some P2P service providers offer a payment protection service for the purchase of goods and services. Also, make sure you know who you're sending the money to or receiving the money from, either people you personally know or legitimate sources that you have independently verified. Now, let's go to next question.
Well, that follows, what I was going to ask you is that, if will my bank return money if I sent a P2P payment to the wrong person or was tricked into sending them?
Well, unfortunately, the short answer is no. If you know you've been a victim of a P2P fraud, contact the financial institution immediately. In some cases, like in a wire transfer, there may be a chance to stop the transfer if reported quickly enough. But in most cases, like a Venmo or a Zelle transfer, the bank will say they are not responsible for your losses because you initiated or authorized the transfer of money. But if it was an unauthorized transfer, like someone stole your phone and made the transfer, you may have a case. So call the financial institution that the P2P payment system is connected with and file a claim right away. Then you'll want to also file a claim with us afterwards.
Thank you. So what can I do to protect myself from falling victim to a scam?
So whether it's an investment scam, a P2P scam, or another type of scam, remember, it's up to you to protect yourself and your money. Stop, look, and think before you click, tap, or transfer money. Remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You want to protect your personal identifying information. Hang up the phone if you get stuck on a call with an unsolicited caller. Don't click on any links or call the number from a text message or an email you were not expecting. And verify that there really is an issue by going to the source. Look up the real phone number or the website of your bank if you got a fraud alert before sharing your personal information.
It's good to know. So going from there, why is it important to report a fraud?
Well, scammers see us all as targets. So they keep trying to get our money, our social security number, or account numbers. And they're really good at what they do. They know how to knock us off balance just long enough to take advantage. So for all types of financial fraud, it is important to report the crimes to the appropriate agencies and law enforcement as soon as possible. Consumer protection agencies like the FTC or the FBI, along with law enforcement agencies, can use your information to build cases against scammers. Your story makes a difference. Every report is a piece of the puzzle that lets the law enforcement agencies see the full picture of what scammers are doing and then stop them, because scammers don't scam just one person. But you could be the one person whose story tips the balance, stops someone from falling for the scam, or stops the scammer altogether.
Thank you. So how can Californians contact the DFPI for assistance?
Can we get the
You
next one,
mentioned a
please?
website? Yes.
There we go. Yes, so please contact us to verify the license status of an investment advisor, broker dealer, or even a new investment product. You can file a complaint if you've been a victim of a financial fraud or scam, including the P2P payment scams. So you can contact us. You can call us toll free at our 866 number there on the screen. You can visit our website at dfpi.ca.gov. You can email us if you'd like a presentation for your organization at outreach@dfpi.ca.gov. You can also file a complaint. If you're not able to use internet, things like that, you can call us and we can send you the forms. You can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter that's sent via email, and we let you know some of the events that we're participating at, but as well as what's happening in the financial services marketplace in California. And of course, you can follow us on social media.
Thank you very much, Sally, for those tips and answers to our questions. And now it's my pleasure to welcome our second special guest to help us understand and avoid investment scams from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. We have supervisory attorney Carol Williams Lammy. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
So a little bit about Carol. She's the supervisory attorney of the Complaints and Inquiries Branch of the Los Angeles Regional Office of the Securities and Exchange Commission. She serves as the office's lead liaison to other agencies, helps the office set its enforcement and examination priorities by managing the evaluation of all tips, complaints, and referrals, and oversees the office's investor outreach programs. Previously, Carol worked for 11 years in the SEC's Division of Enforcement. As senior counsel, she has played a significant role in the enforcement and examination of referrals and oversees the Office's Investor Outreach. And sorry, I messed up there. As senior counsel, she has played a significant role in many SEC actions, including obtaining emergency and permanent relief against the perpetrators of the multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme actors, such as MX Factors, as well as Learn Waterhouse and next components, successfully instituting and resolving one of the SEC's early Rule 105 cases, Liongate Capital, and prosecuting investment advisor Total Wealth and its principles for misrepresentation to its clients invested in a $90 million private fund. She also served on the Division of Enforcement EB5 working group, during which time she served as a principal liaison to USCIS and brought one of the SEC's first EB5 enforcement actions, American Immigrant Investor Fund. Thank you, Carol, for joining us today, and we look forward to learning from you. So before we go to our audience questions, I'd like to ask you a few questions to learn about SEC and what it is seeing and doing about this issue. And audience members, please put any questions for Carol or Sally in the chat during the program, and either one of them will answer them during the Q&A portion of our program. So going to you, Carol, can you give us a refresher on basic retirement financial planning strategies?
Sure. Thank you very much, Sarita. Thank you, AARP California and DFPI for inviting me to participate in the presentation today. I really appreciate it. I just want to reiterate what was said at the beginning of the presentation, that I'm not providing an official policy statement of the agency. Anything I say is my own statement. I can't provide financial, business, or legal advice today, but hopefully we're going to get to discuss a lot of useful information today. So let me just get that out of the way. I'm required to say that before every presentation that I give. You'll see there on the screen the landing page for one of the SEC websites, investor.gov. And pretty much everything that I'm going to talk about today is on this website. So if you do nothing else after the presentation, I really hope you go and visit investor.gov and kind of poke around and see what's there. For those of you that don't know, the SEC is the exclusive federal regulator of the securities markets. We're a civil agency. We have a number of different functions, one of which is providing investor outreach like we're doing here today, and another of which is investigating and prosecuting securities fraud. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation. But yeah, I think it would be helpful before we get started to just give a little bit of a refresher on basic retirement financial planning strategies. And again, if you go to investor.gov, there's a lot of really useful information here. You drop down under the top left-hand side, Introduction to Investing. There's useful information there. I'll walk you through this website a little bit further on in the conversation to give you a better sense of it. But some things to think about if you don't know, and hopefully you do know at this point in your retirement planning, not putting all your eggs in one basket is really a key. Making sure that you have allocated your assets appropriately amongst a lot of different kinds of asset classes, not just stocks, not just bonds, but a well-allocated portfolio, a portfolio that's diversified, so you're not concentrated in any one industry, and something that you are thinking very carefully about your time horizon. When is it that you're going to be accessing those funds? Because that really says a lot about your risk tolerance. And as we get closer to, or even enter the point where we're accessing those retirement funds, then your risk tolerance probably is quite a bit lower than it was, say, at the start of your professional career. So something that you always need to be thinking about as you're managing those retirement investments.
Thank you, Carol. What do we need to know about fees?
So fees are not very exciting topic. It's kind of the mundane fine print, and sometimes the print is very fine that people don't often focus on, but this is something that you should definitely think about when you are managing your investment portfolio. And again, if you go to investor.gov and you do a search for fees, you'll find a lot of resources on this. What we see again and again is that when people are looking at their investment choices, they're not taking a close look at the fees. So you might be putting your investment dollars in something that isn't necessarily inappropriate for your risk tolerance, but you might be paying a higher fee to manage those retirement dollars than you could in a identical or very similar or near identical product if you go through a different professional or you go through a mutual fund that's holding the product in the lower fee mutual fund. So this is something that you definitely want to research. Even a small difference in percentages, say, the difference between 1.5 and 1 3/4% in your management fee can make a big difference and eat into those returns. So I really encourage you to dig into the prospectuses that you have, to do some research on the fees that you might be being charged, and make sure you're being charged an appropriate amount.
Thank you for that advice. How prevalent is investment fraud?
Well, unfortunately, investment fraud is very prevalent. Pretty much all of us are going to be solicited at some point in our life, probably multiple times in our life, for some kind of investment fraud. And I think that really got driven home during the pandemic when we were all home. And maybe you didn't realize how many junk robocalls your home phone got if you still have a landline. And then you're stuck at home and during the pandemic and you realize there are a lot of those calls. So unfortunately, it is extremely prevalent. Almost all of us will be solicited at some point. More than 10% of us will participate in a fraudulent investment offer, and more than 10% of us will lose significant funds to a fraudulent investment offer. So unfortunately, it is very, very prevalent. There are some tips there on the screen about how to avoid fraud. But keep in mind that an investment might not be something just like a stock that gets traded on the New York Stock Exchange. It can also be something that seems a lot more informal, like your buddy comes up to you at your community gathering place and tells you about a great investment deal that he or her has heard about, he or she has heard about. Maybe it looks like an informal investment contract. That could be a security that's regulated by the SEC and the DFPI, and could be something where definitely something where you want to be very careful and do your research, and we're going to talk about how to do that. Oh, Sarita, I think you were on mute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
Wonderful
I
virtual
was going to ask
presentation.
you, how often are seniors targeted in investment schemes?
Yeah, as was alluded to earlier, it's really quite frequent. It's probably the segment of the population that is targeted most often, because you're most likely to have funds in retirement accounts. Somebody's just starting out in their 20s or 30s. They probably really don't have much in their retirement accounts. And lots of people, when I speak to audiences where people are just starting new jobs, lots of times they're not even thinking about that, even though they should be. So you may be saying to yourself, I'm an ordinary person, I'm not a bajillionaire. Why would I be targeted for fraud? And the answer is, really, we can all be victims, but that senior citizens are most likely to be targeted because fraudsters know they're most likely to have retirement accounts with some money actually in it.
Yes. So can you research your investment professional? Is there a way to do that?
You certainly can. And so you can research both the professional and the investment itself. So if you don't mind, I will share my screen and I will walk you through how to do that. So remember, I said, just because something isn't a stock traded on the New York Stock Exchange doesn't mean that it isn't a security. And if it's a security that is bought and sold in the United States, it should be registered with the SEC. So hopefully we can now all see the investor.gov landing page.
Yeah.
But to research your security, what you want to do is go to actually our other website, sec.gov. Hopefully you can all see that. And right here, there's a drop-down menu, search your filings. So if your buddy comes up to you in your community center and says to you, I have an investment, I want you, I really think it's a great investment, you should consider investing in it. The first thing you're going to do is find out, is that registered with the SEC? Because as I said, if you offer or sell securities in the United States, it should be registered with the SEC. And it should be in this database that we call EDGAR. So just to give you an example, I'm going to put in the name of a company that we're all very familiar with, whose securities are registered with the SEC. And you can see up will pop the name of the company, some basic information, and then you'll be able to access the filings that the company has made, which are should be fairly detailed and are things like 10Ks and 10Qs that have a lot of helpful financial information about the company. How does it make its money? Who's running the company, etc. So if it's not in this database, that is a big red flag. And if you're saying to yourself, I have heard of a 10K, but I have no idea how to read a 10K, we do have a lot of, here we go, information about how to use Edgar. So right over here on the right-hand side, you'll see Search Assistant. We'll explain how to use Edgar itself, but it also has some information on how to read things like 10Ks and 10Qs and 8Ks. So really very helpful website. So let me stop sharing and go back to the presentation. So that's how you should research the investment itself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So are there red flags for investment frauds?
There are, but before I get to that, let me show you how to research the investment professional, if I may. We're going to go back. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, if you don't mind. One sec. We can get there. There we go. And we're going to go to investor.gov. So right here in the middle of the landing page, you can see how to check out your investment professional. So if somebody is giving you investment advice for compensation, buying and selling stocks or other securities on your behalf for a commission, then they need to be registered and they should be in this database. You can search both the individual and you can search the entity that the individual works for. So Joe Smith wants to serve as your securities broker or your securities investment advisor. He needs to be registered or licensed. And you would put their name in here. Again, if they're not in this database, that's a big red flag, but let's do a search right now to see what it might look like if they are in the database. So here we're going to research a real person, Jordan Belfort. You can see he's in the database, so that's a plus, but right away we see he's been barred by FINRA or the SEC. If the person's in this database, you want to make sure you get the full report so you can see the information about them and their background. I'm going to click on the detailed report. And you can see this is written in a way that hopefully is accessible to everyone. Information at the beginning of the report is just how this report information is gathered. Where does the information come from? We see some background about Mr. Belfort, where he has worked, the securities examinations that he's passed. But the stuff that we're really going to focus on today is at the end of the report called the disclosure events. So this is at the end of all of these reports. Some individuals, lots of individuals, are going to have no disclosure events. These are lawsuits by law enforcement agencies, customer complaints. A big entity like, say, Merrill Lynch is obviously going to have some disclosure events because any big company will have been sued at some point. But the information is here so that you can make an informed decision. We know the person's in the database, but what else can we learn about their background? So in Mr. Belfort's case, you can see he was sued by the state of Michigan. You can see he was sued by the state of Maryland. And then the last one, he was sued by the SEC and ordered to pay disgorgement of $1.5 million plus interest plus a civil penalty, permanently enjoined from violating securities laws and barred from working in the securities industry because he engaged in fraudulent sales practices in the operation of a boiler room. Obviously, this is information I would want to know before I handed over my hard-earned dollars to Mr. Belfort. This is why it's so important to search this database. One, if they're not in here, that's a red flag of potential fraud. And two, if they are, you want to know everything you can about them before you give your money to them. And Mr. Belfort, for those of you who maybe don't know, is the real life person behind the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, played by Leonardo DiCaprio in that movie, if you haven't seen it. So obviously this is helpful information, and this is how you begin the first steps of doing your researching the thing you're investing in and researching the person and their employer who's giving you the investing advice.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Sure.
Do we have additional is there a slide, another slide that you had or not?
I think there is another slide after we've had a researcher professionals, and then there is another slide after that, where you would, next slide, please. Yes, you would ask me about some of the red flags of investment.
Right.
Yeah. So as you said a couple times, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. What does that mean? One thing it might mean are the returns that are promised to you. So over the life of the modern US stock market, dating back to the early 1900s, the US stock market has averaged about a 10% return. And that doesn't mean every year is 10%. Obviously, it goes up and down. There are some good years, there are some bad years, but the long-term trend is up, and the long-term trend averages out to 10%. So if somebody is suggesting to you that they can get returns of 15, 20 or greater, you should know that that is significantly outpacing the US stock market. 20, 30% returns, that's a red flag right there, because those are rather unrealistic returns to sustain over any amount of time. If the returns are guaranteed, that's a big red flag. If these things are not in the databases, a red flag. But unsolicited offers are also a red flag. You want to be really careful being approached by someone without you're doing the research first. The better tactic is for you to do the research and identify who you want to reach out to other than the other way around. Because often these kind of unsolicited contacts, especially things like free lunches for investment advice, create some social pressure to respond, especially if you've been brought up at a time or a community where politeness is really important to you. You may feel some pressure to respond positively in return for the free lunch at the country club. Maybe you feel some social pressure to at least give that person a few $1,000s of your investment money, but you're giving them a piece of your retirement future. You're getting back some free rubber chicken. It's really not an even deal. So you want to be really careful in these situations, and whatever you do your research on investor.gov and SEC.gov first.
Thank you, Carol. So research, research, research.
Yeah.
So are there any other investment scam trends that we should be aware of?
Yes. So there are some of the most common investment scams that everyone, including seniors, will get targeted for, like Ponzi schemes, and they often have these red flags that I mentioned. Sometimes government impersonation. Somebody from the government claims to be calling you. Hang up the phone. Go look up that government office's main contact information and call them yourself and say, hello, SEC, I got a call from someone claiming to be from the SEC named James Smith. Do you have a James Smith who works in your Los Angeles SEC office? And was he trying to reach me? That's the best way to approach that. One thing we do see people being targeted for a lot is something called a pig butchering scheme, which is not a very nice name. Another name for it is crypto catfishing. Basically, these are schemes where somebody will reach out to you unsolicited. Maybe they'll send you a text message. Hey, Jane, this is your friend, Marcia, and you'll respond back, oh, this isn't Jane. You must have the wrong text address. And then you start a conversation and they become friendly with you and you feel like you have established a real friendship. And soon enough, they need money for some reason. They have a family member with a medical emergency. They want funds to take a trip to come and visit you. And the money only goes in one way. And you may not hear back from them once you have sent enough of the funds to satisfy the fraudster. And sometimes in parts of those communications, they will recommend investments to you or have a company that they're starting and they want you to send funds to invest in that company. Lots of times these schemes are run by overseas operators. Lots of times the people who do the initial contact, who reach out to you, who become your friend, supposedly, are basically in a form of indentured servitude overseas, being forced to make these fraudulent calls. Not a day goes by in my job that I don't receive a tip related to somebody being a victim of these schemes. So be very, very careful about friendship or romantic solicitations being received over the internet, email, phone, text, somebody that you don't know. Be very cautious about establishing those relationships and certainly about sending money.
Thank you for that advice. Going into the elderly and how to get scammed, how can we plan for diminished capacity? Is there a way?
There is a way. If it's not too much trouble, I'd like to share my screen again and show you if that would be okay. And show you
Absolutely.
where some resources are on investor.gov. So going back to investor.gov, we'll get out of this part of it. In this drop-down menu, additional resources, you can see there's a section for older investors. So let's click on that. A lot of really useful information, information that we've already walked through about fees, researching investments, researching professionals. But here under planning for illnesses, there is information about planning for diminished capacity. And some of the most fundamental steps that you can take is make sure you have your important documents organized now. Maybe put together a binder with copies of information about each of your accounts, safe deposit boxes, kind of basic financial information and probably medical information too, that you would want a trusted person to know about. Make sure you give a copy of this to a trusted family member or trusted friend and make sure they know where that information is. And then if you have a financial professional like a broker or an investment advisor, make sure you give that financial professional your trusted contacts information, because if something should happen, like they see suspicious transactions in your account and they suspect that you've been hacked or you've been, there may be an issue with somebody using undue influence, they will have a trusted contact they can reach out to and say, hey, I want you to know that looks like somebody is influencing your dad or getting access to your dad's account. Can you help? Can you speak to your dad? That doesn't mean that that trusted contact then has the power to control your finances. It's just a point of contact for your financial advisor to have. So that's a really important and really basic thing that you can do.
Thanks, Carol. Yes, it is really important to have somebody that you can trust
Yeah.
to hand over these things. Thank you again for all the answers and the advice you've given us. Let's take some questions from our audience. Strat, do we have questions for either Sally or Carol?
Thank you, Sharita. Well, I'm going to invite Molly on. If you're on, Molly, I guess she has a question about the DFPI. Molly, you want to go ahead and ask your question, please?
I had a question just about, for my friends up in Washington State, most of my family's up there, what department they have up there.
So I don't know the specific name. They could have a different title, but you are looking for a state agency that regulates financial service providers.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it might be called the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions. But if you Google Washington State Securities Regulator, you should be able to find the name.
Okay, thank you.
Great. We have another question. I'm going to invite Sherilyn Neal. You have a question about Apple Pay. Please come on and ask your question.
Yes, I didn't see Apple Pay on your list of P2Ps. Is that more secure or is that a different process from Zelle and the others that you had on your slide?
So there's Apple Pay, there's Apple Cash now. I actually personally don't use Apple products. I tend to use my Android phone. But yes, all P2P payment systems, if you're using a big name like Apple, it's going to generally work the same. And I can't say that one is going to be more secure than the other, but it is in how you use it. As the end user, you just have to be careful. You know who you're sending the money to at the other end, right? You're not sending it to a stranger, someone you don't know, someone you just met on Facebook, not somebody like that, right?
Okay, and another question related to that. I think I've seen somewhere where someone can actually ask money of you through Zelle or some of those others. Do they have a way of getting to your money that way without your permission?
So there has been Zelle fraud where you get a text message that says, oh, hey, did you make a purchase on Zelle for $500? And then you click on the link and say no, or you call that number, and it tends to be a fraudster on the other end that says, oh, you didn't make this transaction. We're going to go ahead and refund you the money. And then they'll say, okay, we're going to send you a code. And then you give them that code number that you just been texted. That's when they can actually access your bank account via Zelle and actually steal your money. So if you get a text that says, did you do this? You're going to go ahead and just delete that message. They can't take the money out of your account unless you authorize it, either sending the money to somebody you don't know or giving them the code to access your account.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next I'd like to invite Maxine Brooks. Would you like to come on and ask your question? Maxine, you still with us? All right. Perhaps a
Yes,
question.
I'm here, and
Go ahead.
my husband was a couple of months ago buying what he thought was a great deal. Yeah, too good to be true. He had already done the transaction before I returned home on a coffee machine, and the payment was through PayPal, and it went through an email. But of course, the email was shortly discontinued, and PayPal did reimburse him, but unfortunately, that person probably collected some money. So that was unfortunate. But I mean, we were not out any money. We were out in terms of emotional impact, frustration, disappointment, and he thought he was going to get a great deal.
Yes.
Like you said, too good to be true.
Yes, thank you for sharing your experience with us. And that is basically allowing others to know that, hey, there are Facebook sales out there that says, you know, $100 coffee machine for $20. And you think, wow, you know, I hit the jackpot. And
Yeah.
you want to, yeah, you're not alone. That's why these scammers can do this and they
Yeah.
continue to do it
Yeah.
because there are a lot of us that fall for it. And we go, I want this. I need a new coffee machine for $20.
Yeah.
Great deal. So you were lucky enough to report it quickly that PayPal was able to refund your money. Like you said, the email's gone. Okay. They can, you know, create a new email, create a new phone number, you know, almost instantly. So what we would like you to do is go ahead and report your case to us. And what we're doing at this point is, because you've already been refunded your money, that's awesome, that's fantastic, but we're going to go ahead and collect that data and see at the end of it, is there somebody that the scammer that can be tracked or traced?
So what information are you requesting?
So you're going to go ahead and file a complaint. You can do that online and it'll give you the steps of the email that you have, if you whatever information you have given to that scammer, what information you have that could help us.
The email she used or the email we used?
The email that you used of the scammer, not your personal email, but
Oh,
the
but then
scammer
it's
email.
gone. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think he has that email anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. But now I know.
If I could just
Yes.
reiterate what Sally is saying, it's so important to report because we can't know about the fraud if it's not reported to us. And in order to prosecute them, we have to collect evidence and build a case. And the more information we have from the more sources, the easier it is to build that case. the conduct that you're describing is outside the SEC's jurisdiction, but I always tell people, if you're not sure, go ahead and report it to us. And if it doesn't fall within the SEC's jurisdiction, I'll make sure it gets to the agency that it does. And you can report online for us too, on that website, investor.gov. If you scroll down a little bit, there's a landing page where you just click on it and it says report complaints or make inquiries. You can call us, you can mail us, you can email us.
Yeah,
whatever
in
you're
the
most
future,
comfortable with.
I mean, they use false names, false emails, delete their emails, whatever they can as soon as they get the money from PayPal or whoever.
Yes, that is all true, but sometimes we are able to pierce through the false information. So
Okay.
so it's worth taking the time to submit.
Okay.
Because that's how we know about it, and that's how we build our investigations and cases.
Okay, thank you.
So Carol, the SSC does follow up on tips and complaints that it receives.
Yes, it does. So this is the way our process works. When you submit it to us, we have a whole group of people across the nation whose job it is to go through the tips and complaints and do what we call triage, basically research them, analyze them, figure out if they fall within our jurisdiction or if they need to go to another agency. Now, our investigations are non-public. So if you submit a complaint and then you call up and say, I complained about XYZ company, are you investigating XYZ company? By law, we are not allowed to answer that question. Why we get fired and possibly prosecuted. So unfortunately, we can't say, yes, we are investigating XYZ company. And we don't investigate every tip that we receive because some of them fall outside of our jurisdiction. Sometimes there are challenges, but we do review and analyze them. And this is really where a lot of our enforcement actions come from. So you can rest assured that somebody is reviewing it. You will get some communication. You will not always get maybe the level of communication that you are in an ideal world you would get, because as I say, we are not allowed to say that we are investigating XYZ company. But very often we will have lengthy conversations with people who have submitted information. Sometimes you can figure it out because subpoenas might be issued. And so, you can connect the dots and figure out that in that case, there probably is an investigation. But once we file an action, once we have actually sued someone in court or an administrative hearing, then it does become public, and then we are in a better position to share information. We do also have people whose job it is to just generally answer kind of general questions. How do I research my broker? I've gotten a statement from my broker and I don't understand how to read it. So if you have that kind of inquiry, I would also encourage you to reach out to the SEC, and we do have people who respond to those. And because it doesn't involve a non-public investigation, that tends to be more of a two-way street communication.
Thank you. Quick question here. Can you share some resources about required minimum distribution? I know it's changing topics slightly, but
Yeah, sure. So on that same website, investor.gov, and is it possible to go back to it? Is that if it's not, if you go to the same part of investor.gov and you drop down the resources for older investors, you will see there are resources there specifically for required minimum distribution. Or if you want to go through the drop down menu that says financial tools and calculators, there is under that drop down menu a required minimum distribution calculator. So you can use that to help you figure out the math on required minimum distribution. And that's a pretty popular tool on our website. Right on, let me see if I can get to it from website. I think I was on this. So we're just right here under financial tools and calculators. And then you see right there, required minimum distribution calculator. Here's the calculator itself. And then here's some additional tools, frequently asked questions and comparison charts, and some really useful information about required minimum distribution.
thank you.
And
Strut,
then
do
as
we
long
have
as I'm
we have
here,
time?
I'll just scroll over here back to the main landing page. And you can see right here, here's where you get help. Here's where you submit questions and complaints, right to the right-hand side on the main landing page.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
Strut, do we have we have time for a couple of
Yes,
short
and in the
questions?
interest of time, I'm gonna ask
Yes.
all these questions together because I think they're great questions to be helpful for our audience. So the first one is from Hirsch, and he's asking that, you know, if he's reported to the different agencies, the FTC, the FBI, local law enforcement, should he still go ahead and submit a report to the DFPI as well as the SEC? The next question comes from Charlene again, and she asks, wants to understand what an affinity scam is. So really looking for that. And then something that I think a lot of people are asking is, how do scammers get our names to begin with so that they can start targeting us?
Okay, I can go ahead and get started in answering some of these questions really quickly. So if you've, Harish, if you've already filed with the FTC, FBI, and local law enforcement and credit bureau, that's awesome. That's fantastic. If it's part of an identity theft and there are financial institutions that have, that you've been, if it's been you've been a victim of financial fraud, yes, we still want you to report it to us. And then we can tell you if it's not under our jurisdiction, and we can help you find other state agencies that maybe you should report to. And then a same thing, I believe, with the SEC. If it is a securities violation or investment fraud, you may want to go and report to the SEC. And if it's not under their jurisdiction, they can also guide you to another or other state or federal agencies that you may want to be reporting to. Affinity fraud, let's go real quickly here. So affinity fraud is when you are part of you fall into a scam that started with a group. It could be you belong to a church, or it could be your chamber of commerce, but some organization that you belong to, and the scammers approach someone, let's say the pastor of that church, and he starts to fall for an investment. Let's say he's buying up into a property in Mexico, and they're going to buy into and build this brand new large hotel in Mexico. And then because the pastor decided to invest in it, people hear about it, and the rest of the congregation members also want to invest. And that's what affinity fraud is, that you start with known members of a group, and then everyone else also falls for this investment. But there really is no hotel in Mexico. It is, you know, the scammers say you're going to make 30%. In 3 years, the hotel's going to be built and you're going to be part owner. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and pay you, but in interest, 10% on your, $100,000 investment. And it continues. And then, but they're gone. There really is no, hotel. They tried to get as many members of that church or that group to invest. And when they think they've saturated that market, these scammers are long gone. So you need to report that to us as well as other organizations. And if you don't know where to report it to, please call us and we can assist you.
Yeah, this is a very, very common scam. People use those connections, whatever the social or professional connections are, they use that community to build on trust that already exists. And if you think a person is a member of some trusted community of yours, you may be less likely to do the research and approach it with the skepticism that we talked about today. Very, very common, unfortunately. And this is where a lot of Ponzi schemes get started within the community, or within somebody pretending to be a member of the community, whether it's a religious identification or a professional identification or what have you. So just because you know someone, don't fail to be skeptical and do that research. The person that you know and trust may themselves have been duped. We actually have in the Los Angeles office of the SEC an initiative that we're doing together with the San Francisco office called, a very long, unwieldy name, Western Alliance to Protect Targeted Communities, but it's basically an affinity fraud initiative. So as part of that, we're trying to go out to speak to community groups, trying to increase our investigation and prosecution of these affinity frauds. So if you have a tip, something related to this, we really hope you submit it to us. If you'd like us to come out and speak to your community group, please reach out to us. We're happy to do that. You can email us at losangeles@sec.gov. This is a really important area because this fraud is so prevalent.
Thank you both. Thank you both for your answers. And in the interest of time, we're going to have to stop. It's been an absolutely helpful discussion and lots of information here. And, we have to stop because it's almost 1 o'clock here. I'd like to thank my special guest, Sally Westlake with the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, and Supervisory Attorney Carol Lally from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission for sharing their time and advice today. Special thanks also to AARP staff Strat Maloma and Marisa for their help with tech and for helping us manage questions in the chat. And of course, big thanks to all of you, audience, for joining in our conversation today, sharing your comments and asking your questions. Hope you found our conversation helpful today and that you will join us next week for another interesting conversation on social media related frauds and scams. Please visit us at https://states.arp.org/California, Scam Check 2024. I think that putting that in the, yes, it's been on your screen. And in the meantime, if you have any questions about fraud, please contact our AARP Fraud Watch Network at 877-908-3360. You can also visit us online. And again, I'm Sarita Cardozo, your AARP volunteer host. Thank you for joining us today. And this concludes our program. Have a good day, everyone.